You or someone you love needs help for an addiction. Where do you turn? Foundations Recovery Network offers individualized treatment for the whole person. Our goal goes beyond short-term sobriety. We address substance abuse and co-occurring mental health issues together, providing a firm foundation for long-term recovery. The first step is often the hardest, but we're here with a free assessment, insurance information, and treatment options. Our confidential helpline is available 24/7, so call 877-714-1318 and discover the Foundations Recovery Network difference today.
Yo, what up? Thanks for tuning in today. Thanks to humans for bringing us in. And as always, thank you for your continued support of the show. This is Seth Manter, and you are listening to Sober Guy Radio. Super pumped, super energetic today. I have Cere Demuth. Cere has been a practicing psychotherapist since 1992. She works psychodynamically with children, adolescents, and adults on San Juan and the Orcas Island in Washington, where she specializes in issues related to trauma, addiction, and attachment. And I'm sure there's many more issues that she works on. Cere is a mother, a grandmother. She's an occasional photographer and a super, super talented writer. Aside from working in the mental health, Cere has been touched by addiction through the entirety of your life, as she has had to struggle to deal with guilt, shame, pain, and the fears of parenting a son who struggled with addiction for over 12 years. And most recently, she finished her memoir entitled The Way We Stay. But before we get to Cere, be sure to check us out at www.thatsoberguy.com. There's a bunch of resources there. You can check out all of our past episodes, and you can get information on upcoming live shows and events. Also, if you feel so inclined, you could hit me up on Instagram at SoberGuySeth, or you could email me at seth@thatsoberguy.com. So what's up, Cere? How you doing today?
I'm doing good, Seth. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, and I just want to share with the listeners a little conversation that we had before I hit the record button. I expressed to you, man, the energy of the communications that we had before, and like I was super pumped to have you on today. Just because that energy that you had transcended through me, and I'm definitely sure that the listeners will be able to hear your passion, your energy on some very uncomfortable topics. Obviously this is a sobriety podcast, but feel free to talk about anything. Let's talk about some fear, some pain, some shame, some guilt. Whatever it is that you feel like talking about, please feel free. So I think we're just going to dive right in, Cere. I want to hear basically about your childhood. Reading a little bit of The Way We Stay. You definitely shared and wrote about some of that shame, guilt, growing up as a young child, and then moving into parenthood as a young mom. So just take us back to where it all started.
I think for me, the beginning of my sort of childhood story started with, or my trauma. My childhood trauma started when my mom, when I was 2.5, and my parents were really involved in politics in 1969 when I was 2 years old. I was born in 67, the summer of love, and my parents were young radical college students.
Oh,
and they were in UC Davis, not kind of near you. And so they were really radical and hippies and doing that. And that was kind of a sweet part. My early childhood was that first couple of years was pretty sweet. My mom spent a lot of time with me, just on her hip and making flower daisy chains and selling her hippie wares in Seattle, because we moved from the Bay Area to Seattle when I was a baby. So my dad could go to UW. And so it was really a sweet time in a way, kind of magical. But then my parents got more political, and my parents ended up leaving me, and my mom stayed away for a while, joining the Weather Underground. And that, I think, was something that all of a sudden I knew bad things could happen. You could lose the person you depended on most. And I think that started to inform everything for me. So that was sort of the beginning. And then she did come back, but I don't think we ever fully recovered from that. So that's a big beginning of my story, and why and how I started to figure out and learn about sort of what separation does, and then what happens when it gets re-wounded, because then, as childhood continued, my mom left in other ways too. So that was really painful.
Yeah. So you definitely had to deal with some like desertion at a super young age. Right. And, there was probably some shame and guilt. So at this time, were you just raised by your father with your mom was gone?
It was really not a very long period of time, but my dad, they both left. And I went into this home with another baby. There were other people, radicals in the system, and they took in some kids that their parents were joining and going underground, and then the kids were going to be taken care of. My dad didn't last long. My mom only lasted, they tell it different, 3-4 weeks, maybe a couple months. It's a little blurry, the exact details, but my mom did come back. She didn't want to be away from me. It didn't feel good. And so she came back, and then I was with them both. But something broke there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I could see how there could, obviously some pain that comes. So as growing up, was drugs and alcohol? I mean, obviously you grew up in the summer of luck. So, intuitively, like, I know that there was drugs involved during that time frame, but was it something that was like super present in your childhood were your parents like super users, quote unquote?
No, my mom's kind of lightweight, so she couldn't really do much. She'd get a contact high, and that was good for her. She really couldn't track and drink or smoke. She did a few times, use when I was young, but my dad was more like the daily pot user, the daily drinker, he was just kind of more, that was his daily thing. And when I went to kindergarten, I remember I was told, like, don't tell anybody about the pot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So until 6th grade, then one day, one of my friends in 6th grade were like, oh, your dad smoked. Oh, my dad smoked, but the daily pot smoking, and then the drinking, which my dad never drank. Like, I never really saw my dad drunk. He was just always kind of checked out.
So yeah, and that's so funny. That's kind of how I rolled for the longest time too. Is that I didn't get high, I stayed high, right? Yeah. So it kind of sounded like your dad was living that life too before it was cool. It was just kind of one of those things that he did, and he probably didn't show that he was struggling with that, because it was normal for you to see that.
Yeah. It was normal to me, but I did start to see that when I was a teenager, I started to see, and more of the agitation that came with when someone's not high and they're coming into your world. It's irritating.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So let's get into your early parenthood. So obviously you made it through elementary school, junior high, and then you had Nate at a very young age. So how old were you when you had Nate?
I was 17 when I had Nate, and he was. so to back up a little bit,
Yeah, back it up.
In 6th grade was when my parents got divorced.
Okay.
And so that really shook me to the core, their divorce. As my family kind of started to unravel, right at a time when I needed them to be solid, right? I was getting ready to dive off the diving board into adolescence, and they all dissolved, everything, all my foundation went away. That foundation I'd been building since I was 2. So for me, I was getting kind of shaky, and mad, angry. I was super angry.
Yeah.
And Nate's dad and I had been to school together since we were kindergarten. And he and I connected up like end of 6th grade at our Fort Casey at our little end of, camp trip at the end of 6th grade. And
wow.
We were just kind of smitten with each other from that day forward. But it was sort of tumultuous. So it was sort of back and forth, and a lot happened in his life and in mine. And I was pretty shut down and just angry. Basically, my anger just grew through adolescence. But Nate's dad kind of came in and out of my life, and then we ended up getting pregnant with Nate the summer that we turned 17. After we'd broken up, that's how it can go. We were done.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
One more time. Well, there's Nate. And so I was game. I felt like it was meant to be, that I was meant to be this baby's mom. And I dreamt about him when he was a few months old, a few months in my belly. I dreamt about this little boy in my grocery cart. And I just felt really strongly, even though I panicked in that first trimester once, and it was like, I don't know if I can do it. But then I just settled into it.
Yeah. And so, I mean, obviously that's intuitive, right? Like, you're young. I'm sure there's some excitement, but there's definitely some anxieties, I'm sure, that grew. At 17, here you are, you have a newborn baby that I'm sure you love with all your heart, but you probably at that point, like, you don't even really know what love is. Right.
Yeah.
So you don't, it's kind of a tricky situation. So how did you manage to get through? Because obviously you were on your own at this time, right? Had you separated from your parents? Nate's dad and you, like you had referred to, you guys had broke up. So was it just you and Nate at this time?
Yeah, it was just, my mom was supportive, and I lived with her at that first few months I was pregnant till I got my own place. And my dad was, ambivalent, but he was okay with it, kind of. And then Nate's dad and I couldn't even really talk about it. We were estranged. So I was just doing it myself. And to my mom's credit, my mom was a good mom in so many ways. So I knew a lot about being maternal. And I was always a babysitter. I was always loved the kids. My mom was a nurturer, maybe not structure always, but she was a nurturer and a lover, and she did love me and showed me how to love. And so I knew I could do that part. I knew I could do the loving part. So I maybe did know a lot about love in a certain way. So I just dove in, as soon as I knew I was pregnant, which was like right away, I just knew it. I quit, I no more beers, no more cigarettes at the beach, nothing, just, okay, work, go to finish high school. Talked to my school counselor. I finished in January, and I had Nate in April. And I just was going to waitress and got a little time off. I, got some welfare and stayed home with him at first. Then I started waitressing a little. And then I was like, wow, this is for the birds. I got to get to college. So we packed up, and I applied to college, and I packed up our stuff, and we moved to Olympia in June to go to Evergreen. So, yeah.
So and at that time, what are you, probably 18, 19, maybe early 20s?
Yeah, so I was 19. Nate was, 17 when he was born, and then he had just turned 1, and I was about to turn 19, I think, when I went to college.
So something that is super intriguing to me, because I didn't have the opportunity. Well, I did have the opportunity to go to college, but I pretty much pissed those opportunities away because I was most definitely caught up in my addiction. I started super early, probably 14, 15 is when I started drinking and drugging. So what I want to know about is what the atmosphere of college during that time and how you handled that with a baby at home or with a young child at home. Were you able to partake in the activities of college, or were you still, like, I have a baby at home that I can't hang out and I can't go out and party. And then also I want to be super transparent too that, you don't identify as an alcoholic.
No,
Okay.
but I did drink, as a teenager. I started smoking pot in 8th grade, skipping school, sitting over my friend Cindy's stove vent, smoking her dad's pot, her stepdad's pot. We did all of that and drank. I drank. I think I tell a story in my book about being at a cast party with my mom, and I drank a whole bottle of champagne, and my mom rubs my back, and I'm throwing up. In the toilet. I'm like, not even 12, I don't think. I mean, I don't know. I was so young. And so I definitely had a thing with, alcohol. I mean, I took, did the speed when I was a teenager, trying to be skinny, take a few Black Beauties, drink some Diet Pepsi. I was always a little chubby. So I always wanted to be a little skinnier. Still do, So
what's a Black Beauty?
It's speed.
Oh, okay.
It's just speed.
Okay.
That was what they had in the 80s.
Okay.
And so, I was looking to feel different in adolescence. Definitely. I didn't want to be in my body. I did not want to be in my mind. I didn't want to, I felt like, I think, a failure. I think I've spent a lot of time feeling like I wasn't good enough. I didn't have what I needed. I needed more than my parents could give me. They were kind of confused about what I needed, and they tried, but it's hard being a parent, and I think I needed a lot. I think I was more wounded than they realized, because my brother, he had a different experience, and valedictorian, baseball player, star player. He was just, everything was different for him. So he was younger than me. But so for me, I just, so I tried to inebriate, anesthetize myself. When pregnant, it was like it gave me permission to get out of that. It was like, okay, I'm done with that. I didn't drink for a couple of years. I mean, I think I didn't drink for years, and then I drink a little. Like, I can count. I probably drank, went out with any friends in college like 5 times. I mean, in 3 years or 4 years. I mean, I sat with Monica on the step after I put Nate to bed, and she'd come over about 8 or 9, and we'd have a glass of wine and smoke a cigarette, and then I go in and do my homework, and she'd go do hers. And I didn't try to partake in college. I don't even know what that's like. I just went to class. I came home and I took care of Nate. My mom came down every Wednesday, took care of him, so I didn't have to pay for childcare that one day. My mom gave me little bits of money every month. My dad did. My aunt helped me a little, helped me get a car at one point, used car. So I had this support, a little bit, just enough little bits of financial support. And I waitressed at this place in Olympia called Gardner's Restaurant. And that was a great money maker for me, a couple nights a week. And, but I tried to just minimize my time away from Nate and be with him as much as possible. And I didn't want to be away from him.
Yeah. So I just want to back up a little bit, because you talked about something that was super interesting, and super common for, I think, the majority of us people that are in this human body. I can't speak for everyone, but I think there's a lot of people that are always looking for a way out of the way that we are feeling, some of the stuff that we're dealing with in life. some of the stuff that we're dealing with in our own minds. And it sounds like at a young age, like drugs and alcohol and speed and the Diet Cokes, like that kind of did that for you a little bit. But then you got pregnant, and that was kind of like, I can't do this shit anymore. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to say that you did kind of identify a little bit with being the unease of self at an early age.
Absolutely.
So going through college, obviously Nate's getting a little bit older. He's growing up. Did you ever see those signs in Nate that he was maybe taking after mom of being uncomfortable with self at an early age? And if so, like, when did you start to see that happen? The only reason I ask that, because I truly believe that for me, alcohol wasn't the problem. Mm-hmm. I had a problem with self. Drugs were not my problem. I definitely had a problem with self. And the alcohol and drugs, they took me out of self. So, and then now, and then you take the drugs and the alcohol away, and now I have to deal with self, right? So getting back to the original question, like, when was it that you started to maybe see that Nate kind of had a problem with who he was?
Well, I certainly started to see his grief early on, you know, and it bothered me, right? I saw his sadness about his dad, and also his sadness that he had this mom who I thought I had enough for him, but it became very clear he needed so much more than this 17-year-old girl could give him.
Yeah.
You know, who was trying to like grow up and make a life. And, you know, I wanted to get an education so I could be a better mother, you know, and learn how to stay and learn how to take care of him. But I saw that was really hard. I mean, I felt that every day, you know, just in the way that, you know, just in the way that you're trying to get out the door and you only have two hands, you know, and he needed sometimes more. And I think I pushed that away, but I saw it, but I tried to say, it's enough, it's okay. You know, and talk myself into being okay. But a lot of times, but I felt like he missed his dad, and he only had little bits with his dad. But I knew that a boy, as he got older and started to be Superman and Batman and do all that, you know, like he was always looking for the men, the guys who worked on you know, at the apartment where we lived across from the college called Ash. He, you know, he wanted to follow the worker guy cutting down the tree, you know, and I would spend hours we'd follow the worker guy. And then he liked my brother and he wanted my dad, you know, he was looking for his male. I just felt like he was looking for his man person, you know, very young.
So, God, so relatable. So my parents, you know, they got divorced when I was super young. I think I was maybe 2 or 3 years old. And up until the age of 10, I was raised by a single mother who was just kind of struggling to give myself and my brother everything that she could give us. And I like Nate, like, was always drawn to the man because my dad wasn't around. My dad was only around when he wanted to be around. And we were separated by state. You know, he would probably call my mom maybe once or twice a year when I got to talk to dad. I would go out and spend maybe a week. So, dude, and here I thought, like, you know, maybe I'm the only one that ever had to deal with that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a big part of Nate and my story and our story, because I was looking too to find that person, you know, for him. I felt so guilty. Talk about guilt. I felt guilty. I felt responsible. Like, what had I done?
Yeah.
What have I done? Here, this little boy is, you know, sad, and he goes to school and everyone has a dad, and he doesn't have his dad. And his dad was, you know, fishing in Alaska on, you know, coming and going, and had his own addiction issues that kept him absent. And it was It was painful. It was painful for all of us, and I was fighting it all the time. I wasn't resisting it, trying to make it different.
Yeah. So that guilt for you, it most definitely led to shame, right? So you probably started to hate yourself over some
Yeah.
of the guilt you were feeling. Is that accurate?
Well, I think I had deep shame from my mom leaving me, that I was bad, and my dad's rejection. Who he was there, but he was conflicted.
Yeah.
I think about. I didn't know. I don't know. I really, it was a painful relationship for me, and so I think I had like, what's wrong with me that my mom would leave me, that my dad does not adore me? What is wrong with this? So I think I had that shame, and then I was going to do it different, and then I felt this guilt when it didn't go better. When he was, I was trying so hard, but I just like running as fast as I could, but I couldn't heal his wound, nor was I healing my own fully. Yeah. I was still trying to be good, right?
Mm-hmm.
To heal instead of, I was trying to be perfect. Seth. So if I'm a good therapist and I'll be a perfect mom, he'll wear the clean clothes all the time. He'll have the best shoes. I heard you guys talking about shoes this morning. Nate has a shoe fetish as well. So do I a little, but Nate's is worse.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a joke in our family. And, so I always wanted to have the shoes. I had the take him to Nordstrom to get he had the Oshkosh overalls. I never shopped at the thrift store. I was embarrassed, with my food stamps, but I was always trying to make it better. And I don't know where I was going with that, but I guess I was going with that. Yeah.
I think that's important, right? Like, you were trying to fill that void with some, materialistic shit to make you guys feel better, to make Nate feel better, that he had things to be happy about because he had the new shoes and he had the new clothes. And, deep down inside, you probably knew that wasn't going to fix those things for Nate. But you definitely had those as examples for him. Like, Nate, we're doing okay. Everything is all right. And deep down inside, both of you guys are, what it sounds like to me, fighting the exact same battle in your head.
Yeah, in our hearts. Yeah.
Yeah. So, let's get into Nate's addiction a little bit. So what did the start of that look like?
Oh, fuck. Right?
Yeah.
That looked bad. So I was been in this relationship, in this marriage, since Nate was 8, and really wanted to be a mom again. I loved being a mom. Like, I love being a mom. It's one of my favorite things in the world. It is my favorite. And so, but I'd only gotten to do it once, and I really wanted to do it again. So, ended up adopting a little girl, Vida, from Guatemala when she was 5 months old. And, went through this whole kind of process of getting to that and telling Nate and talking to Larry about that, and, just what that meant to me. And I was 33. Well, within a year of bringing Vida home, Nate was within a year. Within a year, a little less than a year bringing Vida home, Nate started deteriorating even more. He had already, he was dabbling, maybe smoked pot, and he got in trouble, and I made him stack a bunch of firewood, and no, you can't hang out with Julia, without a parent there. But then that didn't really matter. I was trying to manage him and keep him connected and keep him close. But once Vida came, my focus was really on Vida, and I think he said this, maybe experienced that as such a loss. And also seeing Vida's dad show up, right?
Yeah.
He's a show up kind of guy. And so here they are, here he is watching, kind of losing me, watching Vida get everything he ever, wished he had, although she had the mother loss. So it's not like she didn't have her own wounds.
Yeah.
Here we all are wounded.
Yep.
And walking wounded.
Yep.
And, but he just, and then by so by January, he was using meth. So I brought Vita home in March or beginning of April. And
So how old was Nate when Vita came into your guys' life?
he was 15. He turned 16 when the month April, and she came home the beginning of April. He turned 16 the end of April.
So did Nate share any of those feelings with you, like what that did to him? Or does he even know? Did he feel deserted by you when basically I hate to say this, but I'm just going to say it. Like you were throwing Nate away and you were plucking this new daughter.
I think, at some point he did say some things like, you just, you kind of deserted me. Yeah. I mean, it was painful to watch. You were all I'd had, and now you had your focus somewhere else. I was watching you love someone else, and he didn't feel like he had me anymore.
Yeah.
So we've had that conversation a couple times, but not recently. I think it just stirred up a lot. It was triggered. It triggered that not enough feeling, which as long as I was doting maybe and doing everything, we could kind of avoid that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and what's crazy is that you probably don't look at it because you had probably some really good intentions. You said you wanted to be a mother again.
Mm-hmm.
There was an opportunity I'm sure for you to help Vita out. Was that some of that intention that you had? You were in a position to help another human being out. Was that?
Not really. No, I was totally selfish.
Okay.
I really just wanted to be a mom. And I thought I was a good enough human to give somebody love, but it wasn't, it didn't really come from that place. It really came from a place of wanting to be a mom again, and not being not a way to do that naturally, with Larry. But I just felt, I was aware that Nate could feel that way. So I had tried to preempt that, and talk about that ahead of time. But I also wasn't willing to change my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had sort of decided it was I wanted it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's, human nature. Again, that's one of our survival mechanisms is to be selfish, right? Like that's a way we choose to survive in this crazy world that we live in. So let's get back. Sorry for pulling you off track, but hey, it's all good stuff. So
it's okay.
Vita's in your life. She's been in your life for a year, a couple months. Nate's 15. He's partying socially. Like you don't see it as a big deal. And then it turned nervous. Like there was a little
nervous.
Bit yeah. So let's get back to, at 16, I think you said he started doing meth at 16?
Yeah. Yeah. And then I started seeing the signs of that, and I started trying to reel him in, take him to therapy. Like, I don't know. I was just grasping. He was fighting and angry and not himself. It was, he had sores. He was unreliable. I was driving around town, my small little town, looking for him on the street corner all the time. Like, I didn't know what was going on. It was bad, and I was terrified. Terrified. And it wasn't until his friend Alicia finally, called me and said, yeah, he's fucked up. It's bad. It's as bad as you think, Cere.
Yeah.
That I was like, okay. And then that was when I just put everything in motion and created a situation to send him off to one of those outdoor programs called Anasazi in Arizona.
So how old was he when he went to this first, so it was it was a treatment program, right? It was a rehab that he went to?
Mm-hmm. He was 16, almost and a half. Wow. It was January of when he was 16. And that was 8 weeks he was there.
And then so during that time, was there any how did you talk about that with Vita?
Well, she was 1
Oh, okay.
and a half.
Okay.
So we didn't really have, it was like, brother Nate, Nate's going to go get help, or, he's working on his stuff. Yeah.
So she didn't, super young, had no idea what was going on. So Nate was in rehab for 8 months?
No, 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
He's 8 weeks outdoor program.
Okay.
And I want to say Vita didn't know what was going on intellectually, but she was privy to all the tension, right? And
yeah, for sure.
Anger and emotion. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And that was stressful for her,
Yeah. So 8 weeks goes by. Nate comes home.
Yeah, we go spend the night in the desert with him. My mom comes with us to Arizona, stays with Vita, her first time being overnight without me. And we stay in the desert with him and do this and bring him home. And there's distance, like I'm happy to see him, but I'm not sure how happy he is to see me, and there's a wall. Now everything's changed. And he's not really admitting he has a big problem, but he agrees the meth was a bad idea, but he's not really, he's not like gung-ho on sobriety or anything. He's gonna, I mean, the picture that comes to my mind, I have this photo of him. It's when he gets home about a month after he gets home or 2, and it's prom, and he's got the shaved head, he's got the dark sunglasses on and the black suit, and he's the man,
well, he's 16,
not
right?
Yeah, he's now 7. He's just turned 17. He's, the end of his junior year, and he's going to prom, and I'm going through all the emotions, but the emotions between us, we are not connected.
Right. So what was that like? Was it at that time that you started to feel, I love the little excerpt from The Way We Stay when you talk about your 12 years of driving to the grocery store. Did you start having those feelings of pain, fear, shame, and guilt when he was 16?
Yeah. As soon as they brought Vita home and I started to see it was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. And I was not wanting to see people. That was starting. It was creeping in, but I was still hopeful. I was still sort of like, maybe it's not so bad. I guess that was, bargaining with myself. Like, maybe it's just a stage. Maybe I'll get through it, And so I guess I was just riding that line. But I was starting to be sort of horrified, by his behavior. He wasn't the same fun-loving boy I had raised, and I was really, it was really hard to interact. And also I had these feelings at work, right? Because I saw some of his teenage peers, and I felt, like kind of like, what did they know that Nate was doing that I didn't? Or did we both know? We're walking, it was tricky.
So you definitely felt responsible for the way that Nate had turned out at the young age of 17.
Yeah, and I think I blamed everybody else too.
Yeah.
Like his friends, his father, my brother, my mother, Larry, my husband at the time, I was so angry, Seth. I was so mad. I'd worked so fucking hard, and I had just given everything. I think I say in the book, I felt like this, this waitress in this diner that had just saved every penny, every tip in this jar, for like years, for 15 years, and it was for something really good. And then someone just came in and just stole it.
Yeah.
And I was just heartbroken. I didn't know what to do. I was powerless and heartbroken. I was mad because I felt like no one helped me. I felt really alone and like no one understood and that no one was helping me. I just felt like, that everyone thought it was my fault, and I thought it was my fault too, but I didn't want everyone else to think that.
Yeah.
So it was really humble. I mean, it really took me down.
Yeah. Damn,
Because
that's
he was my baby. I mean, we played so much baseball and catch, and I mean, I wasn't perfect, but I was devoted.
yeah. Yeah.
You know,
So there was definitely some outside judgments. There was some inside judgments from you saying like, God damn, what is it that I've done wrong? I've worked pretty much my entire life. I put myself through school basically to give us this better life. And here Nate is 16 years old and I'm already having to send this kid off to rehab. He comes back. The relationship is basically gone, right?
Yeah.
From what I understand. And it sounds like Nate just kind of continues on, right? Like he continues on with his life
I think he tries, I think he tries to do the right thing, but he struggles.
Yeah. So let's talk about that 12 years of trips to the grocery store. Like I read that little 4-page excerpt probably. I actually went on and bought the book today. So I'm super stoked to read it. But I read that 4-page excerpt of the book about 15 times. And every time that I read it, like the pain that I felt, it kind of took me back to when I was caught up in my addiction, the guilt and the shame, like that shit resonated with me so much. And, the amount of time I don't think really matters. And I don't know where I'm going now, but I think, what is important when I talk about, alcoholic, non-alcoholic, like we all struggle with the same shit. It sounds like a lot of the struggles that I had in my life, Nate had those same struggles. He, loss of his dad, his dad wasn't around, definitely felt uncomfortable with himself, looking for some way out for sure. And we, unfortunately found that way out through drugs and alcohol. Actually, I can only speak for myself. That's how I got out of myself.
Yeah.
For you didn't have a way out. You had to deal with that shit for 12 years. So let's talk about it. Like, what was that? What was that like? And where did it ultimately lead you?
Okay. Well, first of all, the alcoholic or the addict, right, uses to get out, right? But but the person who loves the addict, the person the other part of the addiction is the enabling and the controlling and the managing. So that's what I had been doing to get out, right? I'm going to be the perfect mom. I'm going to be a perfect therapist. I'm going to marry somebody who, is perfect too. I'm going to make it all look good. That's my drug of choice.
Yeah.
And I say that every time we enable, I say this to my clients, that's their picking up. That's their needle in the arm, Oh, let me just get that for you.
Yeah.
Let me just check on my addict, let me, I'll manage that. So I think that the escape for me was the control, trying to control everything and be perfect. And so I tried to do that for a while, I tried to keep, so I'm at the, I'm feeling all these feelings, but like I say in my book, I'm the master of compartmentalization. Well, the therapist, that's good training for that, right? It's like you leave everything out, you leave your life outside the office and you're there to receive and listen to other people and be there for them and be what they need. And what you need is, left outside. And so I had a lot of practice doing that. So I had all these feelings, but I could pull it together in the car and go in and do my grocery shopping. I could do my job. It was a master edit, and it wasn't integrated. It was separate. And I think that hurt Nate. I think that was a hurtful, to him, that all that. And I think that's how one of the ways I contributed all those years, even before he started using, was the pressure I put on him to be perfect, because I wanted to be perfect. So then he had to be perfect, and he couldn't wear those dirty shoes. And he had to, and I was always disappointed, like, oh, you're not doing good enough. I was living out of fear, Seth, fear that I would be found out that I wasn't good enough, right?
Yeah.
And he, so a good enough mother, that I wasn't, this teenage mother, I had to be extra good because everyone thought I was going to fail. So so those years, as things unraveled, so much happened, Seth. Nate lost a best friend. He went fishing with his to a using related accident. It was really awful. And then he went fishing with his dad in Alaska. So then I thought, silly me. I'm like, first I'm thinking, oh no, it's going to turn him into more of an addict. But at the same time, maybe it'll take it out of him. Maybe being with his dad will be good, and he'll, and I sent him to his dad's at one point, and that lasted about 2 weeks, I think, if that, they got into it. And so, I think and then we went, I think I just did a lot of compartmentalizing for a long time, for several years, just living two lives, one of pain and suffering, like a shard of glass is in my foot every day, I'm in pain. But on the other hand, I was taking care of Vita. I was happy. We had this little property on the beach on this little outer island, and it was magical and sweet and beautiful. And so that was my salve,
Yep.
And then I, just went back and forth until I started telling the truth, I guess, which took a while.
So I, as the addict, like I always talk about the moment that I couldn't deal with my shit anymore.
Yeah.
That I had the courage to say, like, I can't, and I went to rehab 2 times, had been told that I had a problem with drugs and alcohol pretty much my whole life, from the time that I started. The first time I got drunk, I got hammered. Mm-hmm. So basically throughout my entire drinking and drugging career, it was basically like, dude, you take it way too far, you have a problem. And then I got to a certain point in my life, and I just think like I was fucking done. Mm-hmm. What did that look like for you? Like, when were you done with being the enabler? Would you relate like as a codependent type?
Sure.
So when was it that you like awoke to that you didn't have to do that shit anymore?
Well, I think, right, it happens in different stages. So there was a point when Nate was about 19. So he'd been using since he was 15, been to treatment at 16. So he was about 19-ish. I think he'd been fishing for about a year, maybe 2, somewhere in there. And he was in my house, and I'm finding the Bic pen things in the drawer and white powder, and he's sleeping all day, and I'm, and these people are showing up that I hate at my house, and it makes me want to lock my house. And there's these, I call them the lost boys. There were the boys that were in the drugs with them, and none of them had dads either. Their dads weren't present. And so there was the lost boys, and he was just, he'd come in in the middle of the night and make food and leave all this stuff, and then go in his bedroom and get up, and in the morning I'd be making him a quesadilla. And then finally I was like, what am I doing? And he just was bringing all his toxicity into the house, and I couldn't take it. And so finally one day he was getting ready to leave, and I said, I'd signed my name on this Xterra for him, co-signed because he couldn't get a loan. And of course he broke it the first week, and he and he wasn't paying I was getting the calls. He wasn't making the payments, or, it was a nightmare. And finally I was just in the driveway one day, and I decided, you got to go. You can't stay here. This can't be your place. If you don't pack up your stuff in the next couple days, I'll pack it up for you. You are not welcome here. He goes, I got somewhere to go. Bye.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm telling you. And I'm standing in front of the car and I'm yelling, and I'm just like, if you don't come home and pack it up after you get back from wherever you're going, I'm packing it up. This is it. And so that was sort of, I just broke. I pretty much, he didn't talk to me for a few months after that. He brought the lost girls and they helped him pack. And of course, some of them are my former clients, and they're 5, younger than him. And I'm just like, yeah, it's just bad. It was not pretty. And I had stopped making quesadillas a little while before. I love that line from Napoleon Dynamite. The grandma's like, make your own damn quesadilla. Yeah. And that's kind of what I came to. And he left. He went to Bellingham, Anacortes, ended up hanging out with some of his using friends, crashing at their places. He was fishing, so he'd be gone for 3 months, come home with thousands of dollars. Yeah. They'd use it all up. He'd go back. He's driving his Xterra, got the DUI, but at this point he got the DUI. I was pretty distant. I wasn't helping him, but I was still on that car. So It still was some tension that way. I was still responsible for something, but I was trying to back out. Yep. But I was still trying to maintain the story, Seth. I was still trying to walk the line, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I hadn't surrendered anything. So that, he went to court, I went with him, met him in Bellingham, but I never bought him a lawyer. I never did anything like that. But I was just distancing. I was sick all the time to my stomach. Christmas, we never know if he's showing up. He'd show up, he'd be gray, just gray from opiates. Yep. Oh, it's just, I gave him this shirt one year for Christmas. I got at the thrift store. It was green, and in red it said "Bah Humbug." It still had tags, XXL. That was all I had for him. But I was still heartbroken. I still felt responsible. And then,
so there obviously had to be a point. Did you ask for help, or was it a pride thing because you had been in the mental health industry or profession for so long that you were like, I don't need help? Or is there something in the book that you talk about when you finally said, like, I can't fucking do this shit anymore, I need some help?
So we'll fast forward a bunch, because all this stuff happened and I was just distant, and I was and I was just talking to other people in Al-Anon and stuff, and just kind of reading, helping myself, talking to other people in recovery, desperate. But I mostly just kind of cut him out. Okay. That I didn't really deal with it. I cut him out till he met Stacy. Then he meets Stacy, and then she's great, but I'm like, what is your problem, sister? Why are you with this guy? But she stays, and then she gets pregnant, and I tell her to leave, and I'm like, I'd leave. Run for the hills.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And she stays.
This dude is my son, but he's a fucking wreck. Like, yeah. Run.
So there's that. And then she doesn't. She has this beautiful baby. Well, and it becomes clear at this point that he's leaving her. He's going to Alaska. There's no food. There's no money. So I think, there was this. So then I have to straddle it again, right? Then I'm back in, because I'm not going to let her be alone with this baby. And then they have another baby. And, and it's just, and then Nate says, can they come live with you? And I'm like, no, because I'm going away and we don't have any money. I'm like, you make twice as much as me, And so then they moved to Whidbey into the low-income housing because they're not married. and they live in the low income apartments, and Nate's using. And I think that's then, and it's just so nothing's changing. And I'm like, Nate, you got to become a born again. Like, I don't know what you're doing here, but you got to do something. Like, you can't, if you're going to fish, you're going to have to be born again. You've got stop using. I'm not using, Mom. I'm not, it was just insidious, Seth. It was so insidious. And I started going, and then they moved to Whidbey, and then I couldn't deny. Then the truth of my life started to come out, because I'm driving back to my hometown every week, and I'm spending a night or two with Stacy. I'm helping her with these babies. I'm loving her, but I can't. I'm dealing with my own trauma from childhood and my own adolescence and my relationship with Nate's dad, and he's there too on the island. And so we're just kind of, and he just, I'm raw. So finally I see that what I have to start telling the truth about and getting help for is my own issues. My relationship with my husband that isn't good. And I just have to start telling the truth, Seth. So that's what starts to happen. And this isn't about, well, Cannon is turning 10. I think it was about 9 years ago.
Okay.
And so 9 years ago, Nate's 33 now. So Nate would have been, what is that? So he was like 24.
Yeah.
24, so he'd been using for since he was about 15.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has 5 years clean now. So anyways, that I just started going, okay, I got to work on my own stuff. I told Stacy, I don't want to hear, I can't talk to you. You got to get your own program going.
Yep.
I can't really be a part of it. I'll help, I'll do this, but I'm not talking about your money problems. I can't talk about Nate. You need help. I need help. Nate needs help. We all need help. So that was the come to Jesus. That was when they moved to Whidbey, and I started kind of facing and finally said, okay, I got to start telling the truth about my life. I can't fix anybody. And that's when I was sort of reduced to nothing. And my whole life began to unravel. And I just let it.
Yeah. No, but so did you feel like when you said that, when you verbalized that, like, I can't fucking help you guys anymore?
Yeah.
Was there a weight that was lifted off of your shoulders when you realized that? I mean, obviously there was probably a lot of pain in verbalizing that and saying that. But for me, when I was like, dude, I need some fucking help. I can't do this shit no more. Like, I felt a huge sense of relief. Yeah,
I did. I called my therapist, who I'd seen for years before, and I started going to see him every week. And I just said, like, help me, please, not act any of this out, and help me feel it and hold it and move through it with doing the least amount of damage. Help, and just be there for me. And it was definitely a cathartic, really cathartic and painful. Sometimes I'd leave his office and I could just barely even, I was in an altered state.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't really process. I'd have to pull over on the side of the road. I was, I'm not one to name panic attacks. I'm not really a labeler of those things, but it was just like my whole body was like foreign, to me for a while. And I was just moving through one day at a time, 1 minute at a time. I was reading Pema Chodron, When Things Fall Apart, like a Bible, like backwards, forwards, reading The Language of Letting Go by Melanie Beattie, backwards and forwards, breathing, praying. I put Nate in God's hands. I think that's in the excerpt.
Yep.
Putting Stacy in there. It was everything I could do to just move one foot in front of the other for quite a while, and just trust. And I had to just trust that I was letting go of my addiction, right, of control. Mm-hmm. And I was slowly letting it go.
And I think it's super important that you share that, and that you share what that recovery program looked like and what it looks like today, because there are so many people out there that get caught up in their addict or alcoholic loved one, and they totally forget about themselves, and they totally forget that, yeah, the alcoholic and addict is going through some shit, but I truly believe that the guilt on if you wanted to compare them on like levels, and the shame and the pain that I feel that Nate felt when he was caught up in his addiction is equal to, and probably even maybe a little less, I can only speak for myself, than some of the pain that you were going through. So, you know, for the addict and alcoholic, like there's a ton of programs out there for us. There's AA, NA, Refuge Recovery, Celebrate Recovery. There's all this stuff that is kind of tailored and created for the addict or the alcoholic. What is it? You know, was it a program that you worked? Is there something that you could speak to, you know, the listener out there that is a family member of the addict or alcoholic, and share maybe some of that experience, strength, and hope with the wife, the mother, the son, the daughter that is struggling with their loved ones struggling?
Yeah. Well, I think the principles of Al-Anon were everything. And I didn't go to a lot of meetings because I didn't feel safe to do that in my small town, you know, but just because of my work. But I did have a group of friends that were Al-Anon savvy, you know, and they were huge for me. And the readings, like I said, and therapy. I mean, that was where that's where I could heal. And I think what I say to people is turn that energy. So every time I felt like caretaking Nate and Stacy, I turned that, what do I need?
Yeah.
You know, so it was like, because the urge is, I'm buying stuff. I want to go there. So I started to take things for myself, you know, take the walk, do the exercise. Exercise is huge for me. And I think it is for maybe you and that sober guy too.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely, you know, outside of the, you know, the AA and the NA, there's definitely, you know, additional work for us to do. You know, one thing that I've really gotten into, I'm super stoked. I've gotten into yoga, doing a little bit of yoga, and the mindfulness meditation. You know, obviously I would love to get my ass back into the gym. But there's something there that's holding me back, and I don't know what that is yet. But there is definitely those things outside of the rooms of recovery that we could do for ourselves that make us feel maybe a little bit of worth. Because that was one of the things that I felt when I was caught in my addiction, and I still struggle with it today, is that I'm not, like, I have a lack of self-worth, that I may not be good enough. But when I'm connected to my program, like, I'm good, like I'm worth it. I feel good. I feel good about myself. And I think, you know, just on a human level, that kind of stuff is super important. Community, you know, you reached out to Al-Anon, although you didn't go to a lot of meetings and whatnot, you did follow a lot of their teachings. And I'm sure there was a lot of work involved to dedicate yourself to that and to really take that shit in and kind of work some of the, I'm not even gonna act like I know what Al-Anon is like, but is it like a 12-step program? Just like, okay.
Yeah. So it's admitting you're powerless and all of that. Yeah. Yeah. It's the same. It's like I said, it's like enabling's our drink, you know? So it was working that. And, I think the most painful part for me, you know, was setting those boundaries with my daughter-in-law. I felt like I was kind of abandoning her, but in order for things to change, and it was really sad for the two of us because we had been so close, and we've been just really tight, and that we were in the foxhole together is what I like to say.
Yeah.
And we couldn't really stay there for things to change. And so now, so that was really painful for both of us, but it was necessary in order for growth to happen. And yeah, so that started 9 years ago, but it took 4 more years after that, sort of me starting to write, I call it sort of writing my own ship of my life, getting it back healthy and on course, and telling the truth, and just being on, just changing my own life. Then Stacy finally, came to her bottom, and surrendered, and she just couldn't do it another minute.
Yeah.
It took everything out of her. Nate was had his addiction had just taken everything whole,
Yeah.
and
So do you feel that Stacy maybe saw kind of the stuff, the release that you were getting from some of the help that you sought? She saw that out of you, and that's kind of what she wanted. And did she lean on you for help to get out, or was this something that Stacy was able to just kind of do on her own?
She likes to do things on her own, that Stacy.
Yeah.
She let me love her, she let me love her through all of that, and I did my best not to enable, and I just tried to love her and love the boys. But I also did share my Al-Anon stuff with her. And there's a part in the book where she takes, she comes up here in the summer, and she finally tells me Nate's using heroin, and he's been in the bathroom using heroin, and the boys are in the living room. She's at work, doing massage, and she finally, it's that bad, it's finally that bad. And it's the summer that Cannon is turning, so he's turning 10. So, it's the summer that he turned 4 or something. Yeah. So he is 4 years, just about to be 4. And I call my friend from Al-Anon, and I say, will you take Stacy to an Al-Anon meeting? They're visiting me up here on San Juan Island. And, Stacy and the boys are, Nate's fishing, and we meet in town, and he takes her to the farmer's market afterwards. It gets her a little massage and talks to her about Al-Anon stuff. And then that later that summer, she connects with a neighbor who takes her to church. And she just surrenders. Like, she's just too tired. She cannot do it. That's it. And then she starts to share that with Nate and what's changing in her life. And it's, and her whole life starts to change through her relationship with God and this church that really just surrounds her with love. And so she starts to, finally face some of her fears and her responsibility things, that part of her illness, her sickness, right?
Yep.
And starts to learn about Al-Anon, or learn about the Al-Anon principles, and about letting God and giving things to God, and letting things get worse, so that they can get better.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get into Nate's story too much, because I want to have this dude on the show. I want to talk to Nate.
Great.
So Nate eventually gets sober, right?
Yeah.
Gets clean. Mm-hmm. We're going to leave it at that, because I want to hear that story from Nate.
Awesome.
Cere, what I want to hear from you, what was your inspiration behind The Way We Stay?
Oh, I've been saying for a long time, I need to get this out of me. I have this whole story, and I think Nate getting clean and staying clean started to make me feel like I could take a breath and really lay it down.
Yeah.
And there was a young mom here, like in her 30s, that was doing some writing, and she was writing every morning. On her Instagram, she'd be like, just writing at 5 a.m. every morning. She's got 2 little kids. She's in her mid-30s. And I'm like, look, I have a teenager, and I have a story to tell, and I can write for an hour every morning, like, I should do that. Like, she inspired me. She totally inspired me. And had been going to Pilates at 6 a.m. and to TRX like every morning. So I was in this thing where I was up at 5 doing my exercise, ready, so I was in that mind frame and I was feeling really good. And I just said, okay, I'm going to write for a year. It started in February. So February 2 years ago. So it would have been February 2016. And I just said, I'm going to write for a year and see what happens. So I didn't really tend to write the book. I just intended to lay down the story and get it out of me. But after about a month, I realized something more. I needed some help. So I connected with a woman that I met on Instagram and I kind of been following. Mm-hmm. And she was a writing coach. And I emailed her, and her name's Cere Demuth. And she writes about grief, and she's a therapist. So she's a writer and a therapist. She has a new book coming out too called Anxiety, the Missing Stage of Grief, in September. But Claire just checked my email. She goes, I don't know, I'm kind of busy. What do you want? And what are you writing about? So I told her. She said, okay, and then I hurried up and read her book. And then, because I didn't even read her book. Yeah. And I met with her about halfway on the phone, and we talked every 2 to 6 weeks about what I was writing. And she just sort of helped me start to tell the story, the AB, kind of back and forth, the AB storyline. And it just flowed out of me. I was writing in between sessions. The story started to come out of me once she helped me figure out what my voice was and what I was trying to say. And I basically was writing, 2 sentences in between sessions, and I was writing in the ferry line and on the ferry, and I was waiting for Vita to get out of school and work. And every morning I'd get up excited. I'd be dreaming about what I was going to write. It was begging to come out. So I just poured out of me, and by August it was all out. So between February and August, it all just came out. And then I, worked on it, and stuff. And it was such a relief. I mean, it was such a relief to I could breathe finally, because I'd already really done the work. People say, was it cathartic to do it? It really wasn't, because I'd processed so much with Dawn, my therapist. So it was more like putting the jars on the shelf after canning. It wasn't the mess. It was just kind of like, oh, there, it's all put away now. Yeah. So it was really a relief to write it.
Yeah, it's super, like I said, I've read the excerpts, super raw. It's some fucking good shit. If the listener out there is trying to find this book, trying to find out some more information about you, Cere, where can they find you at?
Well, I'm most active on my Instagram. It's just Cere Demuth, and you can find me there. I have an author page on Facebook, and that's easy to find my name as well. And then, let's see, you can buy the book on Amazon, or you can go to your local independent bookstore and they can order it for you. And if you do that and you have a little local bookstore and you want me to come or or if you want to do it as a book club, let me know where you are, and I'd love to, help you or be a part of that in some way. But yeah, I try to be accessible. I try to respond, within 24 hours to any communication that people send. I've been loving getting people's feedback about the book. So I really like to hear your story and how it affects you. And that's how you reach me. I have a website too, ceredemuth.com, and you can reach me through that too.
So, Cere, we're going to wrap this thing up. I've enjoyed our conversation. It's been awesome. Your love and compassion, and your passion for helping others is most definitely felt, for sure. To the mom or wife or loved one out there that's struggling with their own shit, what words of advice can you give?
Wow. Well, first of all, I'm just glad you're listening and you're just gathering information and hearing people's stories. That's probably the first thing, is that you're not alone. Like one woman said about after reading my book, she posted on her Facebook, she said, she's one of us. Read it. you know, and it's like, you're not alone. And just keep telling your story, keep telling the truth, find the people who understand and who aren't blaming you. And it's not your fault. It's addiction. It's a human condition, you know, and some of us have it and some of us don't, but we're all a part of it. We usually all play some role in it, and just figure out how to love yourself, you know, because you're probably in there, that little girl in there, that little boy, whatever, he's still sort of beating herself up. Like, bring her on your lap, sit with her, then pass that love on. You know, when Nate said, I don't think I could give Nate the love that he needed till I loved myself.
Yeah.
And I asked him a few weeks ago, before he read the book, actually, a couple months ago, and I said, was there anything I did that helped? And he said, well, there was just one point when you stopped trying to fix me and you just were loving me. And he said, and Stacy too. And he said, I felt it. It felt different. And that helped him get the courage to, I think, do what he needed to do. Not to mention God, I think. You know, God really came down. So find your higher power, find your people, love yourself. That's love, and tell the truth. Tell the truth.
Yeah. Cere, much love. It's been awesome. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Seth. You're amazing. You're awesome. I love meeting you here.
Thank you. So to the listener out there that still struggles, please do not be afraid to reach out. There's a tons of resources out there. Thanks for listening. Much love, respect, and keep your blood clean.